Hey everyone, this is Ben Cicchini, founder of Give and Grow, here with another episode of the Give and Grow podcast. This is our social emotional learning series. So, this is where we talk about all things mental health related for parents, for teachers, for kids, giving out tips, tools, techniques, everything that we can throw at you. We're going to get to you today. I'm super excited to introduce you today to Kayla Chung. Kayla is calling in from Hawaii. She's a school counselor, an elementary school counselor with her master's in education. And we're just so excited to pick your brain today, Kayla. How are you feeling?
I'm good. I'm excited. I know on LinkedIn, I watch some other podcasts from school counselors, so it's really interesting to just see people's experiences and where they're at and the different levels that they're presenting. So I'm really excited, to be asked to join this. So thank you for having me.
100%. And the reason why I love having conversations with elementary school counselors specifically is the work that we do with Give and Grow is around those young kids. And we believe, and every school counselor that I've talked to believes in the power of social emotional learning to like help prepare these kids for their teenage years and the challenges that come then, life skills with relationships and communication. All this stuff is wrapped up. Can you just like talk a little bit about your experience, what you notice with the young kids, and why you believe in this work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I know, of course, like the textbook answer, right, is that school counselors, all of our work is related to social emotional learning, whether it's classroom lessons, small groups, individual counseling. But I'm in some spaces that are like outside of education, and it's really interesting because they always ask me like, "What do you do?" Right? Like, what do I do on a daily basis? And not only kind of having fond memories of counselors like at the high school level about like college and credits and stuff. And so
Mhm.
it's interesting because I don't think that people realize like at the elementary level, we are teaching things that like are super foundational that like
Mhm.
you kind of forget that needs to be taught, like sharing, what to do if you disagree, friendships, how to respond if someone doesn't want to share friends with you. Just like all these like really complicated things that seem super easy, but as I'm talking to others outside of education, they're like, "Whoa, I totally forgot that those have to be taught, and that a big platform of where those are seen is here at school." So.
Yeah, exactly. I love that because it is. It's like, and it's like we weren't taught these things when we were younger. I don't think. Maybe like through trial and error, or like we got into trouble in a situation. Then we may have had an adult there to help us out. But that's what I love about this work, that it's being put into the schools to be able to reach every single kid as they're going through this journey, as they're facing off with these challenges with friends or with pressures at school, whatever it is. So can you talk about just like identifying and labeling emotions, and maybe give some tips for parents on how they can help their kids do that and why that's important?
Yeah, so I noticed that at the elementary school, and of course, each elementary is experiencing very different things and different needs, but I know that a big thing at our school is just labeling emotions and feelings and not categorizing them as like good or bad. I
Mhm.
think that that's a big one, and it's more than just kind of the textbook like happy, sad, mad, those kind of things. I know here a lot of our work is really about teaching students about the different feelings and emotions, and then really kind of leaning towards strategies or ways to cope with those. And again, not that it's bad or you're in trouble for feeling those things, but what can we do to have healthy responses at school, and then also to almost like the consequence or what happens next if you respond in a way that maybe doesn't fit the school environment, or there could be repercussions. I'm noticing that's also big of just the ways that we deal with emotions in different settings between home and school can be very different, and how
Yeah.
kind of students navigate that, what's their familial norms and the routines at home versus like how you respond to emotions at school. So I think for parents, and I'm a parent of a soon to be 4-year old, so I'm really learning this
Okay.
at the ground level. I think just the biggest thing is being able to talk about feelings, really candidly. Um, and I also feel like just being able to say like, "Hey, I feel really upset today, and it's okay." I think you as the adult telling kids that that's okay helps to normalize like we have feelings, and even just within the given day, we can feel like a roller coaster of feelings, and that's okay.
Yes, I love that. And that's the phrase I feel like can just really hit home as like something you can share with your kids, just and that's okay.
Hmm.
You may have like hurt your friend's feelings at school, or maybe had an anger outburst, okay, and that's okay. And you know, here are the consequences, here are the repercussions, or here's how we can work through those things, for next time, right? And just having that compassion, I guess. So yes, thank you for sharing that with parents modeling a
Mhm.
little bit of that emotional awareness and just
Yeah.
doing that. How does that help kids? Like, how does it help them regulate? How does it help them learn? Can you just dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, so I noticed that, especially as a parent myself, we are, whether we like it or not, like our kids are watching us. And that makes me feel a little, even as a counselor and as a mom, right? I'm like, oh man, like how I am setting the tone and showing how I'm coping with sadness or stress or those kind of things, my child and the students I work with are also learning from that as well. And so I feel like in terms of the modeling, like we said, that it's okay to say that you're stressed, or even if I didn't display my best self that day,
Hmm.
being able to show that at developmentally appropriate levels and be able to connect, like, I'm so sorry, but mommy was feeling really mad. I need to take a few
Hmm.
deep breaths, or I didn't like it when those kind of things. I definitely
Hmm.
feel that a lot of times with the modeling, we almost go really quick to like uh almost like trying to teach. And I although I agree with that, I also feel that we can show other opportunities like I need to take a break, or
Hmm.
I feel like a lot of times in the counseling world we're like so quick to just the strategy to be just talk it out, and I don't necessarily think that has to always be the first response. It can be counting,
Hmm.
it can be we're just dropping it for a little bit and revisiting, it could be about just change of scenery. So I think in terms of modeling, my recommendation for parents as well as my own self is not having to be so quick to the talking, like let's talk it out and let's
Hmm.
fix, and kind of showing
Hmm.
strategies that don't only include what did we learn from this.
Right. I love that. What do you find in those taking a break, taking some breaths, dropping it and revisiting? Like, why does that work?
That's a good question. I know that here at school, right? Like, as a school counselor, I noticed that like teachers, if they don't have the capacity or they want kind of a break, quote unquote, they'll send them to me, right? If they're sad or mad or any of those things. And I noticed that, the teacher's expectation can often be like, I want them to talk it out, stop crying, and then come back ready to learn. And I
Hmm.
noticed that my approach is like, I put stuff on my desk, we color, we do putty, whatever, and I'm like, you just let me know when you're ready to talk. So I feel like that helps because it gives them ownership and power to be like, yes, I have these feelings, and she's here whenever I'm ready to meet her where she's at, as opposed to
Hmm.
me just pushing. I feel like
Hmm.
sometimes if we have that agenda of like, okay, hurry up, you have to finish crying in 5 minutes, like, let's go, you have a math test. It just is like a band-aid, just goes on the surface. So I like giving students the opportunity to be like, if you need to sit with your feelings for 5 minutes or 15 minutes, like it's really up to you. And I
Hmm.
think that that helps to set the tone that like I'm not trying to rush you,
Hmm.
but I'm here. So let me know when you're ready to come
Yeah.
my way. Yeah.
Right. I love that. I love that. Giving them time and space. You mentioned earlier, like these emotions can be a roller coaster that we can go
Yeah.
through throughout a day. Like, and that energy, it's sometimes hard to just like control, fix, or even understand right on the spot. So I've found that in my own personal like growth of just like giving it the time, even with the strongest, especially with the strongest of emotions, depression,
Mhm.
anger. Like we got to give those things time to really like move through and settle. And I love that you're putting that into practice and inviting parents to do the same. There's no rush in this stuff. If you rush through it, it is that band-aid that's just gonna like fall
Yeah.
off, you know?
And I think too that like what I notice about also is like just because a student is crying or they're visibly what I would sense as a certain emotion, it might not be the case, you know? So like someone can be
Mm.
crying and I could think they're sad, but they could be embarrassed or they can be overwhelmed. And so I feel like that kind of space helps for them to dictate how they're feeling as opposed to how I'm perceiving the situation of how they feel.
Hmm.
So it gives them really the ownership of this is how I feel and this is how I'm displaying it, and that it's not like I am trying to tell them, hey, I think you feel mad because, like, really letting them tell me how they feel,
Mm.
even though I might have a very different lens of what happened and how I would feel.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And it sounds really empowering for the kid too. We're not
Yeah.
like, hey, I notice you're feeling sad when we don't know that for sure, right? Like, so it's giving them that practice and that time to start to identify, to start
Yeah.
to understand and to feel it versus
Mhm.
like you mentioned going in right for the fix right off the bat.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's like this is the approach that I believe in, and I'm so happy that you're sharing this with your students and your families. Like
Mhm.
when you talk about frustration or anger, right? This seems like it would definitely apply to that sort of situation. What are some other things after you've given it some time, right? That can like what's your approach or what do you like to share with students around frustration and anger and managing those emotions?
Mhm. Um, so on my free time, quote unquote, I like to watch Disney Plus movies. Sorry, super random. But there's this Disney Plus movie called Elemental. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I haven't seen it yet.
It's like a fire girl and a water guy and whatever their relationship or friendship. But in the movie, it talks about it's kind of heavy, although it's kiddie. It's really heavy. It talks about how your frustration and your anger is just telling you something that you don't want to talk about or something that's bothering you, and that emotion telling yourself like, oh, something doesn't feel right inside. Um,
Mhm.
and I feel like with anger, and frustration, I think like how you said, right? After letting them kind of sit, and if we do go in that direction, like I feel angry or I feel frustrated, I do like to then kind of unpack it with them, and talk about what is causing them to feel frustrated? How do they know they feel frustrated? What is the ideal kind of situation of what can help you? And I notice a lot of times at elementary, the students that I work with that tend to, do get angry or get upset and come to me, their strategy is like a lot of avoidance. Like, I'm
Mm,
not going to come to school because I know my teacher's going to be mad, or they're going to be upset I didn't do the homework or something like that. And so I noticed a lot of my work lately has just been kind of naming that and almost like
mm,
the choices and consequences. If we chose to not come to school, what would happen? If we chose to come to school, what would happen? And kind of just talking out the scenarios. So like, yes,
mm,
all those options might not be ideal, but what do they think is the best path to address this anger or frustration? And then
mhm,
really working through tangible steps. Like, yes, you might feel frustrated in options A, B, C, or D, but which one do you want to do? And then what could potentially come up? I
mhm,
notice that a lot with anger is just telling them that it may come again, or you might always view situation in that negative connotation, but really thinking about what is that anger solving? What is that anger telling us? And then what
mhm.
decisions can we make despite those feelings?
Right. I love that. I love that it's breaking down, it's making it real specific like, hey, here are your options after we've identified it, after we kind of know what the situation is. Here are some options and you're giving kids choices and I'm sure within that they're coming up with their own healthy approaches as well, or at least recognizing like, oh yeah, I can see that might not be the best choice if I do want to hang out with my friends at school, if I do want to, learn and go to college one day or whatever it is that their motivation is.
Mhm.
There was something that you mentioned in there. What was it? It was around the anger, the frustration. I'm drawing a blank on it right now, but I'm gonna have to watch this back. I feel like there was a lot of gold in that nugget right there. So I guess moving on like into some of those challenging and chaotic situations that parents might find themselves in at home, right? It might involve some anger. It might just involve just pure and utter chaos. What's something that you'd like to remind parents that will support them when those emotions get challenging or chaotic?
Yeah. Um, I think that the best advice is to just start the day anew. It is hard a lot of times to like just dwell and have yucky feelings about whatever happened the day before or not, or even in that moment. Just depends how heated it is, I guess. But just being able to like give yourself grace so we don't need to keep revisiting what happened. Like, okay,
Mm,
yesterday wasn't our best day. We had a hard time. We're moving on. And then just starting fresh because I feel like for example, my son, who's gonna be 4, he is someone who keeps like repeating like I'm sorry that I hit whoever. There's something like that. And I'm like, it's done already, Houston. We're moving on. We're gonna make good
Hmm.
choices. And so I think that even just to model that with him because he's so worried about pleasing me or the repercussions of that and telling him like, no, it's done already. We're gonna move on. We're gonna make good choices. And so I think that that piece I'm hoping it alleviates stress, not only with students, but with parents, because I don't want their conversations to only be rooted in all the things that we did wrong or what didn't
Right.
work yesterday.
Hmm.
Because then you're kind of like just drowning yourself and you're not able to move forward.
Right. That makes a ton of sense. There's this skill that I love to teach that I learned from actually like a basketball mental skills trainer, and it's next play speed. And it
Mm,
talks about like, okay, you made a mistake, you made a failure, like acknowledging that, that's okay, acknowledging the emotions that came up in that moment, and then
yeah.
moving on to the next play,
Hmm.
like and
Hmm.
I think as we continue to do that, like you said, we're not like like carrying around the weight of all the shame and the guilt and the mistakes that we've made in the past. We're letting those go. We learn from them and on to the next. I love that reminder. Thanks for dropping that in there, Kayla. Um, y- that actually flows right into the next question that I want to ask around like failures and mistakes. Like,
Yeah.
is there, can you talk about how those can help build resilience and what potential like strategies or approaches to failures and mistakes? I just shared one, but I'm curious to
Yeah.
know what yours are.
Yeah, I know that at our school and the work that we're doing with certain grade levels, because there's me and another counselor, we split grade levels, so that we're able to follow them in their educational career, K through sixth. But I know at the younger grades, we really talk about how mistakes help us grow. I know that's like
Mm,
super superficial or those kind of things, but I know that, for example, this last year in first grade, we did a lot of work around like what do you do when you don't know, almost giving them situations of like I know they're gonna get frustrated, and then it's almost like a plan, safe, experimental, like I'm gonna challenge you, you're gonna mess up, you're not gonna know what to do, and then what do we do?
right.
Um, but in a safety, in a
Hmm.
safety net, right? It's not like I don't know, something disastrous is gonna happen next.
Right.
And so I feel like teaching that in my first grade, going to second grade, I'm hoping that it helps with that disposition of it's okay to make mistakes. Mistakes just show me that I can learn more. But I think it's really
Mhm.
about what strategies do we use when we make mistakes. And it tends to be a lot of the self-talk. I know a lot of my students equate to like, I'm not good enough or I don't know or those kind of things. So I think,
Mhm.
again, kind of unpacking like the mindset that we have around mistakes and telling ourselves like, okay, the mistake is saying that I need to ask my teacher for help, or I really don't understand
Mhm.
this as good as I want to, and trying to see that as a gift as opposed to like
Mhm.
I'm gonna get in trouble because I feel like mistakes tend to have a negative connotation as opposed to like a learning opportunity.
Right. And it makes a lot of sense, especially like with, I'm sure there were situations growing up where it's like a mistake did lead to a punishment,
Yeah.
right? Like in sports, that's the case. Your team makes a mistake, you guys got to run, or like you make you make a mistake on a test or make a mistake in class and now you're in detention or you got to stay after school. So it's like those systems have definitely got to catch up to speed so that we're helping
Yeah.
these kids through those situations. But I love that you're putting kids in those situations, a safe situation to
Yeah.
fail. And then be the intention behind that being, okay, now we're coaching on how do we
Yes.
manage this? That's
Yes.
like you're teaching, like it's easy to say, like, be a good sport or like do,
Yeah.
like, but it's another thing to like teach people how to be a good sport or how to
Yeah.
face these failures and mistakes because they're going to happen. I love that.
Yeah. And I even was thinking about too as you're sharing like just a correlation between like accidents and mistakes, right? And I was thinking too, like I saw somewhere about like there's a video of like someone responding when their child like spilled milk or spilled something, and the reaction of the parent like, what are you doing? Da da da, or
Mhm.
versus like, oh, it's okay, let's get the rag, whatever. And so I even think that kind of linked to mistakes kind of just goes through not only are the skills that we're teaching kids, but then I think the teacher or adult or the parent's response into that, because I do think that that will then feed into, right? If we're saying that mistakes are okay or accents are okay or things happen, but yet we're responding really authoritarian or, really like you are in trouble, that
Right.
definitely get confusing for kids.
Hmm.
So I think that that's also a piece, not just teaching kids that mistakes help us grow, but then also the parent or teacher or counselor having the skills to also reinforce that, like, it's okay. Like, I'm gonna give my son, like, it's okay. What do we do when we spill something? As opposed to, Houston, you should know, like just
Right.
that piece too. Yeah.
That's huge. It's just like our reaction or response
Yes.
is
Yes.
going to help enforce, our words, the things that we're teaching
Yes.
them. That's huge. And what advice or what has helped you maybe in parenthood or even as a counselor,
Yeah.
like be able to catch yourself in those moments where you might be just like repeating an old habit or a way that was taught to you, that you recognize as ineffective.
That's a great question. I mean, it's a daily situation by situation goal. I'm not gonna lie. And it is different because I feel like as a counselor, these students are like my own kids. I treat them as if they're my own children. And it is a balance because it's almost like my expectation of them versus where they're actually at. And just that
Mhm.
difference of like, I
Mhm.
know you're learning and growing, but I also think you should know that.
Right,
Like
right.
not struggling within myself. Yeah, I think linked to what I said about just it's a daily thing. I have to be
Mhm.
really mindful and
Mhm.
I think because each kid has such a different case by case and disposition to my approach and how they view things, I'm having to be really aware of like, okay, if my approach is really hard on them, then they'll get it. If other ones I'm having to be really soft and quiet and they lead, then we'll go that direction. And so I think just
Mhm.
being really mindful of where they're at, but then
Mhm.
also being really up and up with them of like, I'm really mad at you. Or
Right.
like I'm having a hard day or I feel really overwhelmed. I think that that's
Mhm.
something that makes me a strong counselor is because I'm very honest with my students because
Mhm.
I'm hoping that that's reciprocal
Right.
ultimately.
It
Yeah.
makes a ton of sense. Like you're
Yeah.
modeling that honesty, that openness once again, and the mindfulness, that piece,
Yeah.
both in where the kid is and
Hmm.
what works with them. Like, what's my intention versus
Yes.
my impact, right? My
Yes.
intention is for us to grow, but like, what actual impact is that having on the kid when I am hard on them or soft on them? That was one of another podcast episode. Somebody dropped that in there, like intention versus impact. I'm like, that's great. But the mindfulness piece being the key there, like to be present in that situation and recognize, oh shoot, that authoritarian is coming out and that
Yeah.
doesn't work with my kid, right?
Yeah.
They don't actually hear me. They get more scared and now they're just acting out of fear. This is something I'm headed into having my first kid in November.
Oh.
So all these calls and conversations are like free game that I'm getting like from super experienced and talented people,
Yeah.
and that seems to be one that really drops in there for me is just being present and mindful.
Yeah, and I feel like too, like I notice the days where I am more scattered or, if I'm on my phone or if there's other things that I'm bringing, outside into the counseling space, it's good for me to just take a moment and be like, okay, like how am I showing up? Am I taking out my anger from whatever happened before walking this into
Mhm.
campus? Is it another student that's contentious? Like I'm having to be really aware because I could be subconsciously treating a student in a way because of where I'm at and has nothing
Mhm.
to do with them. And I think because relationships I have with students are so valued, it can be misinterpreted, right? That I'm like
Mhm.
I'm meeting with you and I'm mad, but yet like it has nothing to do with you. It's like
Right.
all me and how I'm showing up. And so I am noticing that even like as my co-counselor and I plan our upcoming schedule, like having to be really mindful, like I do need those breaks between my sessions or working with
Mhm.
students so I can like recenter, refocus, and get ready for like the next student because it
Mhm.
tends to be that because the students have such different needs and different experiences, it is hard for me to emotionally meet them where they're at if I have my own stuff that's like clouding my vision, quote
Yeah,
unquote.
that makes a ton of sense. And I feel like the way that it translates for parents is we're constantly bouncing from thing to
Yeah.
thing as well. You're going from work to dropping them off or picking them up and all these things. Can you find those moments in between the transitions to recenter, to release some sort of stress in a way that's effective for you? Do you have any like of those practices that really work for you that you would recommend other parents?
Yeah, so I know that for me, and I don't know if this is a pro or con, but I'm someone who needs to really like separate things. So it's like I'm mommy Kayla. I come here and I'm like counselor Kayla. I put back on the hat of mommy Kayla. I'm like sports mom Kayla. And so I think that differentiating those for me helps me to have a center. Like when I leave campus, I like leave counselor Kayla here in my office and then just put mommy Kayla hat on. And so I think just
Mhm.
that difference helps for me. Just because I am someone that likes to like just separate and have to be really focused on like I am here for my son at his
Mhm.
swimming class or whatever that leagues. And I feel like it is hard because we are juggling a lot of things. And so I think not compartmentalizing per se, but just having a really clear, like, this is who the role I'm needing to take in this moment, in this
Mhm.
time, just helps me instead of things trying to bleed. You know, like, okay, I'm here at the practice, but I'm responding to work emails or I'm like online shopping or something like
Mhm.
that. That confuses me personally.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, and so I just like kind of that one thing at a time. Like, I'm just here for my sons, whatever. And then after
Mhm.
this, I can go home and be mommy Kayla and cooking and feeding and nurturing. And so that helps for me.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks for dropping that in there, Kayla. Is there any way that you can like that parents can collaborate with the schools or
Mhm.
other support systems that you would recommend?
So I know that I think first and foremost, I know that every time I call families, they think that the kid's in trouble. Like I'm like, hi, this is Kayla, the counselor from the school, and I have to start off the bat saying, your kid is fine, they are not in trouble. And so I think just a connotation that if a kid comes to the counselor, they're in trouble, or it's some kind of like punitive or like taboo thing. And that's the first piece that counselors are here to help, to support, and just because they're here in the office does not mean they're in trouble. I think that's like number
Hmm.
one.
Hmm.
And I think number two, I know there's been a lot of conversation around like family engagement and participation in those kind of things. And I kind of feel mixed about it because I do think that parents are doing the best they can in their given situations. And
Hmm.
whatever engagement looks like for that family is awesome. Like you don't have to come to all the things. You don't need to, like whatever works for you and your engagement um,
Hmm.
is amazing. But just knowing that I think shifting the lens that parents are like the team captains. I don't think they see themselves in that way. They're like the most
Hmm.
valued player on the team. They know their child
Hmm.
the best. And so I try to help empower parents that you are the lead and we are just helping of how can we best support your child here at school. And so hoping that as they see themselves in that role, that they will come to us and be able to speak of
Hmm.
like, this is not working for me or I need help, those kind of things. I'm hoping that
Hmm.
that can help create those bridges if they knew how important they were.
I love that like perspective just of and empowerment of the parent. Like, hey,
Yeah.
you're taking the lead. We're here to help you.
Yes.
And I also like can totally see what you're talking about. Like usually if a kid's coming to see a counselor, it's because the teacher might be over capacity and they
Mhm.
might need to send them there to get some support themselves, which is great. The
Yeah.
teachers are knowing their boundaries and are sending them to you for support. And then also like that reframing of the
Yes.
school counselor role and that yeah they may have made a mistake, they may have done something on accident, and that's okay, right?
Yes.
Like and
Yes.
it's okay that your kid got sent to the counselor today. That's
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
That's part of the learning process. That's probably the best place they could be sent, right? To actually like regulate, play, take some time, be with somebody who's been trained in this stuff, that's passionate about it and truly genuinely cares for the growth of the child.
And I noticed too that when I do talk to families and, I do tell them like this is what happened, or, even if it's a serious, such as like suicide ideation or
Mhm.
self-harm or, something more extreme that unfortunately does happen, here at the elementary level. Um, Again, I think like you're saying, the reframing and then just talking about this is what we talked about, this is what's on your child's heart, like how can I support you, how can I help you? Because I do think that a lot of the times, school counselors are really valued in their buildings where we do know a lot of things, whether we
Mhm.
want to or not. And so my hope is that as we continue connecting with parents, they'll start reaching out to us more. Um, because of course, like we have a population of over about 700 kids at my school, and so I don't get to
Wow.
see everybody per se.
Mhm.
But other relationships that I do have, I do notice that parents do call me more and we do collaborate more. And it's a way to be able to know who the kid is in the home and school settings that can often be really different sometimes.
Right. That makes a ton of sense. I love that it's like it's so corny. I feel like I might say this like every other podcast, but like it takes a village, you know,
It
and
does.
you guys are such an amazing resource. So I think this is the invitation here at the very end for parents. If those of you listening in, just continue to reach out to your school. They're amazing support. Yeah. So Kayla, thank you so much. Is there any way or anywhere that people can get in contact or reach out to, potentially pick your brain or ask for support, that
Yeah.
sort of thing?
Yeah, so I do have a LinkedIn. I think that's the best way to communicate with me. I know that the time difference is a little bit tricky because we're in Hawaii. But yeah, I think my preference would be LinkedIn. And then of course my my school website or those kind of things are also a way to reach out to me. I'd love to chat and get to know you and be a friend if you need one.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for your time, your energy today, Kayla. Like you're on point with this work and thank you also for that, the work that you're doing with these
Oh,
families and
thank
kids.
you.